Hey there, how you doing? It is I, the Terrorific Lady, otherwise known as Brandy, and welcome to Retro Horror School, and happy Friday. It's the weekend, guys. We made it. Woo! I was browsing on Threads, as you do, and I came across a screenshot of what looked like a Twitter thread. I'm always calling it Twitter. I'm not calling it X. I came across a screenshot of a Twitter thread that had the common stereotype and misconception that all horror fans are sadistic. The why would you watch stuff like that kind of thing. And I see that a lot on reviews for horror movies as well on Internet Movie Database. Like, this is a movie for sick, depraved individuals. Only a sick, twisted mind would want to watch something like this. Lots of stuff like that. And of course, I knew it was a ragey post. And after I got peeved and annoyed, I took a step back and it got me thinking a little bit. So the idea that horror fans are just depraved, twisted individuals comes from a few common misconceptions about the horror genre and about its audience. So let's explore some of the main reasons why people hold these beliefs that horror fans are just these sick, twisted, sadistic individuals. Confusion about enjoyment. As we horror fans know, horror movies include a lot of things like gore, violence, injuries, lots of twisted stuff. And a common misconception that people might hold is, well, if they like horror movies with that kind of stuff in it, then they are fans of violence and torture and things of that nature, that we have some kind of fascination for it, when that is definitely not the case. Horror movies allow horror fans to control their fears in a controlled environment. Now, I talk about that a little bit more in my YouTube video titled The Psychology of Horror. I'll leave a link for that video up above. But yes, the reason why we enjoy horror is not because we celebrate violence. It's because we like to almost confront our fears and what makes us cringe, like, head on. Extreme imagery. As I mentioned earlier, horror movies can include a lot of things like gore, graphic imagery, extreme violence. And people who are just like, geez, so does it mean that does it mean they like that kind of stuff? Do they desire that kind of stuff? Do they like seeing that in their everyday lives? No, that's not it at all. Those elements of horror films, the graphic imagery, the violence, and extreme gore, these are elements in a horror movie that are meant to evoke fear and suspense. And it's not there because horror fans glorify and seek out violence. These kinds of elements are tools to help further the horror plot or the plot of the movie along. Not all horror movies use these kind of tactics, but horror movies like slashers and the gory horror movies and the ones dubbed torture porn, they use those kind of tactics and elements. Taboo subjects. So horror movies frequently explore what could be considered taboo topics or subjects, such as death, a fascination with the supernatural, and madness. The exploration of these darker themes in movies may be kind of unsettling to some, and may make people be like, geez, like, these people, or like these horror fans, have a really kind of sick, twisted fascination with these topics and subjects. But horror is meant to elicit feelings of fear, shock, or disgust, again, in a controlled environment. And so that's why these topics are brought forth in horror movies. For instance, in a zombie apocalypse, you have, of course, zombies, these rotting, decaying corpses, and they allow the audience to proactively confront their fear of death and face it head on. Outsider perspective. Now, if you are absolutely 100% not a fan of horror, that is perfectly fine. Horror is not everybody's cup of tea. But the outsider perspective of horror, when they look at all these horror movies that have the elements of fear, shock, disgust, the graphic violence, the gore, the taboo themes, they may look at that and be like, well, why do people enjoy this kind of stuff? And these misconceptions just lead to the unfair stereotype that horror fans are these sick, twisted individuals, when in fact, there have been studies that have shown that horror fans have some of the highest levels of empathy and compassion. So it is important to recognize that these kinds of beliefs are based on misunderstandings rather than the reality of the situation. Horror fans come from all walks of life, and horror fans enjoy horror for a variety of reasons, whether it's to experience that adrenaline rush, whether it's to confront their fears head on, or whether we just find horror movies fun. There's plenty of reasons why horror fans like horror movies. And ultimately, the perception of horror fans as sadistic, twisted individuals is a gross misconception that overlooks the nuanced relationship between horror and its audience. So if you see these stereotypes come up, yes, you can get annoyed and you can get peeved at that. Just as a horror fan, I do, and I definitely understand that, but it is important to challenge these kinds of stereotypes and educate people and foster a better understanding of why you or why horror fans enjoy horror. So my question to you is, what other stereotypes have you heard about horror fans? Or if you want to go the more kind of positive route, why do you enjoy horror? Let me know in the comments below. And sadly, class is dismissed, everybody, but I will see you next time. Bye!